Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. Again, unfortunately for you, here is still Vittorio Campanile with me after a hard week of training to replace, as everybody knows, Lucas Biglia, is Lazio Mackenzie. Lazio, how things are going? Are you ready?
Yeah, well, if you call a hard week of training kind of lounging about in the sun, having a few drinks, spending some time in a hot tub, then I've been working very hard. But that's been about it. So I don't know how we're going to get on next season now.
I don't think it's the right move you're making. You're not going to have a nice summer like that.
My attitude's terrible, isn't it? I'm the new Ravel Morrison.
He's coming back as well, so let's get ready. I don't think we're going to be able to place him anywhere this season, but who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean, so that's something we touched on before, I suppose, a little bit as well. But you can't. It's hard to imagine. But then again, it's hard to imagine who else is going to come in for the guy. So anyway, Ravel and Morrison aside, I think we've got more important members of the squad to get through first, don't we?
Absolutely, because it looks like this week there has been a positive contact with the agents of Vrij. So it looks like he's going to renew the contract with Lazio. This info came even from Di Marzio, that is one of the best experts in Italy of transfer market. And it looks like De Vrij will sign again with Lazio. Now the discussion is the buyout clause. Lazio is willing to fix a buyout clause of 30 million euros, while the Vrij agent would like something around 20. So this week we ask you, do you agree? Is 20 fine? Should it be 30? Should it be more than 30, like 40? Or let's sell him because we have already Wesley Hutt. And the result of the poll is 45% said it should be 40 million euros. 36% said it should be 30. And 17% said, let's sell him, we have Wesley Hutt. Now, Alistair, what's your thought about this?
I actually agree with the consensus there of the fact that it should be 40 million, and not so much for the fact that I think Stefan de Vrij is a player who's necessarily worth 40 million euros, but the whole point of inserting a buyout clause into a new contract would be to give him and his agent some security in the fact that the clubs do have the option on the table of paying that if they want to, but at the same time, if you put out 25 million, it's kind of an insult to the club, because he knows that even a slight amount of form will draw people into buying that. And I think if you're going to negotiate a new deal and actually bring a buyout clause into it, there's no point in setting it that low. From a Lazio perspective, it has to be as high as you can get. And I think 40 million is reasonable in terms of being a reflection of his ability, but actually giving Lazio a bit of protection as well. So I think I agree with people on that one.
And to be honest, the buyout clause is just an insurance for the club. You fix it at 40, and this doesn't mean that you can find a deal with another club for 35. But just be sure that if De Vrij has a very good season or another season like this one, Liverpool doesn't come and pay only 20 million and sign the players. Instead, if it's 40, then it can start a discussion. Lazio is going to make money anyway because they bought the player at 8 million. But I still think that Lazio should put a higher clause, because also looking other defenders around the world, there are not that many good players available at the moment. De Vrij is even young, so I know there are problems, there are concern about his injuries. In the last 2-3 months, I think he hardly finished a match with Lazio. But I think he's still a very good player, so the buyout clause should be at least 30 for me.
Yeah, we actually had a question from Wadiari on this of why does deny De Vrij's renewal of his contract have only 30 million for the release clause. I suppose the answer to that is just that they have the upper hand in these negotiations in terms of De Vrij and his agent. They know that Lazio don't want to lose him for free next summer. They probably don't want to have him in the squad playing for a year and then lose him for free with his eye already on next season. And they also don't want him to be sitting around trying to get out of the club this summer as well. So that will be the only reason behind the fact that there would be a lower clause, not so much about his ability, but about the position the club have found themselves in here, where there's only 1 year left on his deal, and they kind of have to do something about it. And that's another question, I suppose it's worth considering, is would you like to have De Vrij at the club for another year, but lose him for only 20 million because that's his clause, or would you prefer to sell him now for 30 but not have him for another season? That's another kind of hypothetical situation.
Probably I will go with 30 now, because it's 10 millions more, and you have time to buy another player. And as we said already in the past, with Wallace, Hood and Bastos, you still have good replacement. The thing is, and I think you agree too, the power of the players now when they start talking about the renew contract is so big that the clubs have most of the time to accept what the players want, and can't do that much, because if De Vrij doesn't sign the contract, which is something he can do, he can go for free next season. And the only chance the club has is to accept an offer from a club that maybe is already in touch with the De Vrij and know the situation, and so can really offer very low money to get a very good player. And I think UEFA should do something, because otherwise the clubs are really in a tough situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, agents have too much power, I think, anyway, generally in football. But Stefan De Vrij is an interesting case, just to bring something else up, in terms of the fact that he had this knee injury, which he needed an operation on before, which you've kind of spoken about in terms of the fact that the club have stuck with him behind that and through that whole process, and he should maybe show a bit more loyalty because of that. But if he has another season now where he does have injury problems, suddenly he's a year older, he's not a young up-and-coming defender anymore, and his place will be taken in the team, and suddenly his value would plummet, you would think, if he has another serious injury next season. So that's another thing you have to kind of consider when you think about, yes, you look at the market now, and if you think about Premier League clubs interested and the money they pay for players, you think losing him for 20 million doesn't sound great. But actually, if you fast forward a year and you think of him having a bad injury at some point in the season, might not actually be bad money. Things could get worse. I really like him as a player, and I want him to stay at Lazio, but you can imagine him, this is quite a pivotal season in his career, where he either justifies the hype around him, or he could suddenly, be added to the list of players whose injuries have kind of had a big negative impact on their entire careers.
You're talking about injury, but even the situation that happened in the last 2 months, where De Vrij pretty much never finished a match, he never got really injured, but the knee was soaring and he couldn't finish the match because of the pain. That's something that for me a lot of clubs consider, and that's why a Liverpool didn't come to Rome and say, okay, we're offering 35 million euros for that player, because I think they are concerned that he's not fit enough. He just came back with the national squad after 1 year. He didn't play for them. And all these things, not injuries, but the fact that he doesn't finish a match, I think it's an alarm for all the clubs that are interested in him. So next season will be really, really interesting to see how he performs, especially because next year Lazio will play even in Europe League, and I presume the numbers of match De Vrij will play will be higher than this season. So we have to see how the knee will react, how he will cope with the suffering, the pain, how long will it take for him to recover. There's the one of the question is De Vrij able to play 2 matches in a week? Because this year he wasn't used to. He didn't have to play 2 matches a week. But next year, this will be an important question, and I'm thinking that Inzaghi, if he can, he will make play. He will ask De Vrij to play in Europe League and Serie A.
Yeah, and you wonder, you hope that the medical staff are actually involved in this, in these negotiations in a way, not involved in the actual negotiations, but you make a very good point there in terms of him not finishing matches and not really being tested, playing multiple games during the week. Like you say, he's going to have to do that next season more and more, especially with a back three system being used when we only have kind of four and a half, I suppose, centre backs. And these problems we can only judge as fans from seeing the way he plays. It's only the staff who will know day in, day out quite how much of an impact it's had on his training, on his overall fitness levels, on his strength. And you wonder if, when they're having these negotiations and trying to decide on his value, how much his worth is to the club, if the medical staff have been consulted and been able to say, right, look, I'm not sure he's going to bounce back from this. I don't see him getting back to the same level. Because as I said before, at this point, people still might imagine that he will return to the level of his first season at Lazio, when the medical staff within the club might see him and might know that that's not going to happen. It's impossible for us to say, I suppose. But
well, one thing important that we can say is that in the last month, Vrij during the week skipped at least 1 or 2 training every week just to recover from the pain of the knee. So this is interesting because next week, when he's going to play Thursday and Sunday, he won't be able to skip 1 or 2 training because it's going to be match day the day afterwards. So, and this tells you even how he struggled to recover after a match for the injury he had, for the suffering he has. So this is another thing that you must add in the things when you're going to think, okay, are we going to buy this player or another one? So it's interesting. It's going to be important to see how we recover. Sometimes you take 1 year to recover 100% from after these injuries. So next season is going to be very important. But crossing fingers, he's going to stay with Lazio with a new contract, hopefully 30 million buyout clause minimum. I can't see, honestly, Lotito accepting a lower clause. I don't know if you agree. But yeah, let's hope it's going to be like that.
Yeah, and it would be good to actually have this, like we were saying before we came on air here, to just have this resolved and to have something we know what's going on, because with the Bilia's situation, hopefully within the next week will be resolved, but with Keita it's still up in the air. So it's quite nice to actually suddenly be talking about a De Vrij renewal instead of being completely uncertain about his future at the club.
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, we were talking about this before. This is the Lazio style, or the Lotito style, if you prefer. He always takes a lot of time to sign players, so don't expect any big update in the month of June, unfortunately. Everything will happen in July, presumably. And it looks like he wants, before to set the players' renewal issue with Keita, De Vrij, and Biglia, and then start looking for players to bring in, which I don't agree totally. I think it's the wrong way to act, but that's how it's going to happen. Biglia's coming back from Argentina after the friendly match he had around the world, so I think next week will be the key. We're going to find what's happening with Biglia, and then it's going to be a cascade, I think. De Vrij news, Keita news, and then the transfer market of Lazio is going to start, hopefully.
Yeah, and you hope for Inzaghi's case as well, that from his perspective that's the case and that things can get settled as soon as possible, because we've mentioned before the fact that it's going to be more useful for him to know who he's got available next season in terms of building his squad around him. Bringing it back to Keita, we've had a couple of questions this week. Both from Rami Al-Gendi here. The first one we'll do is whether Keita is actually worth 50 million on his own, and what is his key strength is the other one. You can go first on this, Vittorio, if you like.
Thank you. No, I don't think at the moment, at least, he's not worthy of that money. He's a talent. He can improve absolutely, but I don't think at the moment he's here. I don't remember who spoke about Keita this week in Italy, but someone pointed out, like, only with Simone Inzaghi, and in the last 2 months, Keita has been astonishing. In the rest of the season, I think it was Luca Marchegiani said this, in the rest of the season, Keita played well, but like other 10, 20 good strikers. So he's still not worthy 50 millions, and he still didn't play a whole season at that level. And there's the risk, and this is one question I wanted to ask you. He played well under Simone Inzaghi. Are we sure that if he goes to Juventus or AC Milan or wherever, he find the same situation that makes him play at that level again? I'm not sure. I think in the explosion of Keita, there's a lot of Simone Inzaghi. The quality of Keita is his quickness, his ability with the ball. You said it a lot of time. He's not very good in the finalization. He's improving there, but his quality is the speed. If you give him 1 meter with this ball on the feet, it's done, it's gone. So he still has space to improve, but again, and I want to hear what you're thinking about that, but I think there's a lot of Simone Inzaghi in the explosion of Keita. If Keita go to Milan, I'm not sure Montella will be able to give him the same chances that Inzaghi give him and put him in the right position to play that well.
I completely agree with you in terms of the Inzaghi effect on him has been enormous, and yet there's a couple of things here. First of all, yes, he's been talked about a lot in this transfer market, and he finished the season brilliantly. But like you said, you do have to consider the fact that he hasn't been consistently playing at that level throughout this season. And the other thing is, I'm not convinced that he's played or he's been more consistent towards the end of the season. I'm not convinced that his ability as a footballer has improved that much during this campaign. I think it's more down to the fact that Inzaghi found the right role for him and the right way of managing his personality and putting him into a system in which those kind of qualities came through. And one thing I did mention before is that his finishing did get better, and that was always the thing that's frustrated me. I'd agree that his key strength, yes, it's his pace, and he's very good on the ball as well. He's good at running with the ball, got good trickery and all the kind of things you want to see, which kind of makes people rate you with that kind of price tag. The one thing I would say in terms of the question of if he's worth £50 million, or 50 million euros, it kind of depends who's buying, because a couple of the clubs who are looking at him within Italy, I'd say absolutely not. But if you're looking at Spurs and Liverpool, I went a bit left field this week and did even the most minimal research by actually Googling their signings from last season. And you're talking about a club in Spurs who spent £30 million on Moussa Sissoko last summer. And in Liverpool, a much better player, but they still spent £35 million on Sadio Mane. And, you can do your own conversions into euros from that, but it's more. So when you're talking about Premier League clubs coming to sign young, talented wingers who have, the kind of qualities that get people off their seat and so on, it's not really about whether he's worth it or not. It's about whether they'll pay it. And I think these clubs, maybe not 50, but around the 40, between 40 and 50 mark, they could well pay that for a guy like Keita. I'm not convinced, like I say, for the reasons I just outlined, I suppose, that he is worth it, but I wouldn't rule it out actually happening at some point.
Absolutely, but the question was, is it worth it? No, but could a club come and pay that? Yes. And the other thing is, I think the last 2 months Keita played so well because of the confidence he had. He knows Roma very well. He knows Simone Inzaghi very well. I thought he learned even the system much better after playing for 1 year there. And that's why he performed even better. Again, leaving Lazio to go anywhere else. He has to build his confidence again, have to learn the system again. You're not sure he's going to play that much, that well. And let's hope that the Premier League clubs, or Paris Saint-Germain maybe, comes with 50 million euros and buy Keita. That would be the best option for me. If he leaves Serie A, I think we're all going to be happier.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, well, personally, obviously I'm incredibly biased here, but I do think his personal development would be best suited to staying at Lazio under Inzaghi and trying to get that level of performance out of him for the duration of the campaign, a whole season. because it's been so impressive what he's managed to do with him in the last year. I'm going to bring in Rami's other question actually at this point, which is it's actually proven to be quite a good debate on Twitter this week as well with us and others about who's better to buy, Papu Gomez or Luis Muriel. And I suppose Papu Gomez is a guy who's been in the news a lot this week in terms of his links with Lazio. And Muriel is a guy we've spoken about a lot on this podcast before. So for me, it's still Luis Muriel if it has to be one or the other. But the point I was trying to make online earlier this week, successfully or not, I'll leave that up to you, is that Papu Gomez, he may well come with a bit of a price tag. I wouldn't pay 20 million for him, by the way. But if you're going to pay 10, 12, maybe 15 million euro for a guy who's at the absolute top of his game in Serie A, and I dispute the fact that he's a one-season wonder. I really like Papu Gomez ever since he was at Catania. I thought he's a really good player. And he's not new to Serie A. He's not had just one season playing at a good level. This has been his best season, the last one, obviously. But to bring in a guy who's capable of playing in Serie A, has proven it, is very aware of the league, has qualities. I really don't get on well with this idea of him not being a worthwhile signing just because he's going to get older and he won't have resale value, because it comes back to what we've talked about last week, I think it was, when we were talking about how Lazio moves on as a club. And one of the things is it needs to be an ambitious club and try and do more than just bring in players and sell them on later on. And I think bringing a guy like Papu Gomez is an investment in actually achieving more. It's an investment in success rather than an investment in you bringing him in and then you're selling him on later. I don't know what you think.
Absolutely, I agree. The thing is, and this could be the thought Lotito and Tare will make, Papu Gomez, it's ready now. If you buy him, you know you're going to have 2 very good seasons at least. At least. I'm not saying that he's going to have only 2 seasons, maybe 3, 4, very good. And he's ready. He had a terrific season. As you were saying, he was playing well even at Catania. I think he grown, learning much better the Serie A. With Muriel, probably he's not going to be able to play as well next year as Papu Gomez will, because even with Sampdoria he struggled a little bit. He has to regain confidence, etc. Probably with Muriel you can have 4-5 seasons better than Papu Gomez, that could have a dip in his performance after 3-4 years. But if you want to win next year, probably Papu Gomez is the best solution. It can always happen that Muriel comes to Lazio and play like he played in the last season with Udinese. That was terrific. But I think Papu Gomez is ready. Muriel can improve, and I think with Simone Inzaghi can really reach his limit, his top. But if Papu Gomez arrive, I would be quite happy, because he's shown that he understands the football, the Serie A, and he's playing really, really well. So I think
this is a guy. Sorry to interrupt, but this is a guy who's also just been introduced to the Argentina team. So a team that Mauro Icardi can't get into. So I mean, that goes to show the form he's in is not just a fluke. If he's actually getting into the Argentinian national team because of his performances with a club like Atalanta, with all due respect, Atalanta are a small club who overachieved last season. And so what he could achieve at a club like Lazio with better players around him, I think it's crazy to suggest that he wouldn't be a success.
And he can be a leader as well. While Muriel, I'm not sure he has enough characters to live in Rome and don't feel the pressure of playing for Lazio, etc. Gomez proved to handle this pressure, to be a leader, to be able to put the team on his shoulders and bring it to Europe League like he did this season with Atalanta. He's probably a little bit more a complete player. He can play near Immobile, he can play left, right, etc. So, honestly, I would be happy. Now, the problem is, Atalanta won 20 millions. Now they're gonna buy Berisha, so that's gonna make the price drop a little bit. If Lotito's going to be able to get him 12, 15 million maybe, that could be a good price, and I would go for it if possible.
What would be your price for Gomez where you wouldn't go any higher, but you'd take him for that price?
It really depends how much Inzaghi wants him. I think the coach is fundamental. I think 16, 17 would be the top price, but I still think that would be a good price for getting him.
Yeah, 16, 17.
Maximum,
well,
yeah.
We've another question. Sorry, I'm just going to fire this at you as well at the same time from Sam Bryan earlier this week, saying could Pavoletti be a potential target? Said he's not really had a chance at Napoli and he's a different striker than Immobile. Vittorio, you've mentioned before that you quite like the idea of having a bigger, more physical striker. I suppose Pavoletti is kind of more in that mould than Immobile is anyway. So do you think there's anything in that? I mean, I know these rumours have been shot down before by his agent and so on, but is he a guy you like the sound of?
It depends, again, the price. It looks like De Laurenti wants a lot of money. We're talking about 15, 18 million euros. I think it's too much for him. But if the price was lower, I would be interesting, because after a season like that, half a season like that in Napoli where he didn't play, I think he wants to prove that he's able to play at that level. So, again, it depends a lot of Inzaghi. If he trusts him, if he wants him, then if Lotito can get a lower price, a good price, I would give him a chance. You know my thought. I would like to give a chance to Palombi, bring him there, and maybe fight for a place with Pavoletti or someone else who has more experience. But yeah, again, the price will make the difference for a player like that.
Yeah, it strikes me as a kind of deal that Lazio have done before quite successfully in terms of bringing in a guy who's not getting the game time but has previously been there in Serie A and played at the top. And it makes you think of even going back as far as getting Federico Marchetti from Cagliari after a year where he wasn't playing, and Ciro Immobile last summer, and guys who are kind of really motivated to prove everyone that they can get back to that level. The problem I've got with Pavoletti is that I'm not convinced, even when he was at that level, that he was actually ready for a club that much higher up than Genoa anyway. I mean, he's a player who scored a lot of goals in quite a short period of time, but not over much of a sustained period. And I'm not convinced, like you say, I'm not convinced he'd be worth investing an awful lot of money in. It'd be great to get on a cut price deal, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't be paying double figures for him.
No, again, if Lotito is able to get, it could be even a loan for 1 year with already a fixed price after that year. It could be a good option. The big question, I think, is can he handle the pressure? He's shown that, well, Napoli had the problems because Martens simply played astonishing well. But can he handle the pressure in Rome? Can he play well in a big city? Because, unfortunately, Genoa in the last year hasn't been a terrific team and didn't fight for something really important. So that's the biggest question for him. And again, the tight press will be fundamental.
We're just moving on to our final question here from Kilkito, who's asked, and sorry to put you on the spot here, Vittorio, but it's another quite big one we've got. So, does Claudio Lotito deserve all the hatred he receives from the fans? Something that's been going on for years and years and years now. So, does he deserve it in your eyes?
Do we have 1 hour to talk about that?
Well, yeah, I think we need a new podcast.
Special Lotito. Well, don't get me wrong. I think he's not the best Lazio president ever. Absolutely. He made a lot of mistakes. He made even some good things. I think the worst thing of Lotito is his transfers. In summer and especially in January, he's really terrible. The thing is, he tried to save every single penny every time. And most of the time, it happens that another team comes in and buy the player. So if a player is wanted, there's Lazio and another team who wants a player, most of the time he finishes with the other team. So that's the biggest problem. But at the same time, there's been a lot of fans, even journalists, accusing Lotito for something that wasn't his fault. I remember last year, everybody was blaming Lotito and Tari to sign for the signing of Hood. I thought he was a good defender and things like that. Remember when Berisha came, everybody said, this is another friend of Iglitare. Lotito's doing mistakes like that. Again, Lotito's not the best president. It looks like he's improving. Signing Peruzzi, it was a big thing that helped a lot Lazio. Bringing Simone Inzaghi, he finally understands that what is missing in the club is former Lazio player, Lazio fan, and re-establishing the relationship with the supporters. He needs to make the final step. Lazio now with Lotito is always a club that is able to fight for the Europe League. I think this summer is going to be fundamental because he has the club, the team ready with 2 or 3 new players to compete for the Champions League. He has to make the final step. In the past, when he had the chance, he always failed. This season is going to be fundamental for him to prove that he learned from his mistakes.
Yeah, and well, in terms of my take on answering the question, does he deserve all the hatred he receives? Probably not, just because of the amount of hatred he receives. I don't think anyone deserves that much hatred. But I agree. I think the main frustration, he's also spectacularly bad at his own kind of PR. I don't think he helps himself with the way that he handles questions from the media, the way that he handles his relationship with the fans. The lack of relationship with the fans. And obviously, I mean, it's historical. It kind of kicked off, didn't it, when he came in and he removed the season ticket allocation for various ultra groups and things like that. And it's, just bad decision after bad decision. But I think more what people are frustrated about now is what you were saying about his investment and the seeming inability to actually try and kick the club onto the next stage. And it's frustrating, especially for fans who see clubs like Napoli and Roma, who are at that next stage above in terms of competing in the Champions League every year. And Roma have an American president who comes in and suddenly pumps enough money into the squad for that to happen. De Laurentiis has done a similar thing at Napoli, and it's frustrating because Lazio should be up there, and I think he also maybe suffers from the fact that people still have Sergio Cragnotti very much in feeling like a recent memory, although it wasn't that recent. There was that level of success not too long ago. It is worth pointing out various things in the fact that he has stabilised the club. He has brought it forward in terms of introducing we talked last week a little bit about the club's what it needs to do to push on, and we mentioned things like marketing and so on, and he has done things like set up the Lazio style and the radio station, TV station, things like that, which are kind of good, but it's just hard to ever get the impression from him that his heart is in the club, and I think a lot of that's down to the way, like I say, that he handles himself to the media and he handles those relationships.
I think he's terrible in that, and he knows it. That's why he doesn't talk too much with medias. Most of the time, the things he wants to say are right. It's the way he say it that it's terrible, wrong, and creates all the issue. So he has to improve there, and let's see what happens this summer. I don't know if you agree, but with the situation of Keita, Biglia, and Vrij, I would have said to Tare, okay, sign me now the best midfielder, and before we sell Keita or Biglia, we already announce him, so the fans are going to be happy. They're going to say, okay, we are selling Biglia, but we got Klaassen. This is a proof that the club wants to improve. And instead, he's not. He's waiting to sell this player, and then he's going to make this move, which is absolutely wrong. But we don't have 1 hour to talk about Lotito, I think. Otherwise,
well, I mean, yeah, that's you've made a good point there. But in terms of Klaassen, we talked last week. We had a poll about who would fans like to replace Bailey if he had a choice, and Klaassen was top of that. And within that week, he's gone and signed for Everton. So it's a good example of the fact that Lotito doesn't move fast enough in the market. Whether or not Klaassen was actually someone he was looking at is another question. But I think the transfer policy and the inability to actually learn from his mistakes is a serious issue, and that's my main sticking point with him now, to be honest. And I know I've mentioned this before. I don't want to go on about it over and over again, but the year we qualified for the Champions League preliminary rounds, and there was such an unambitious transfer policy that summer when the team had worked that hard to finish third place, and that's unforgivable kind of lack of investment to that point, in my opinion. But like you say, if things change now, 4 places for the Champions League, it opens up a new opportunity for him. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Before wrapping it up, Alasdair, what do you think about Federico Marchetti? Do you think he's the right keeper to help Strakosha improve and grow as a keeper? Do you think it's time to sell him because he won't accept to be in the bench and see Strakosha starting?
Well, it's a hard question. This is I have a soft spot for Marchetti. I think he's quite hard done by in terms of the amount of criticism he receives from a lot of fans, and he's a bit erratic, but he's always been a bit erratic, and it's quite good fun really sometimes. But he's also capable of some absolutely superb performances. In terms of being a mentor for Strakosha, I think he'd be a brilliant mentor because he has so much experience, not only with Lazio, but with the Italian national team. He's a World Cup winner, don't forget. And the problem is then that as a mentor for Strakosha, they're both going to want the number 1 shirt, like you say. And I don't know, I think, to be honest, I'm a bit unsure about this because I like Strakosha. I like the idea of him being trusted, but I'm not entirely convinced that we're ready to just say you're the number 1 for next season in Europe in Serie A, and we've got complete faith in you. I think Marchetti has done enough for this club to deserve to still be that, to still have that position.
Yeah, but he's always injured. That's the problem.
He's injured far too much for a goalkeeper. That is a serious problem. And then you have things like when he injured his shoulder a few years ago, and he came out and said, I remember, that he'd developed a problem where he was scared of diving to one of his sides because he thought his shoulder would pop out. And to have a goalkeeper who's scared of diving is not a good situation for anyone to be in. So he does get too many injuries. It all depends on his own take on it. If Marchetti says he absolutely refuses to budge and has to be the number 1, then it's different. But if he's quite happy to be in a position where Strakosha is going to play a lot of games, I suppose we might be in a position next season where we can actually use 2 goalkeepers quite a lot because we're playing in Europe as well. So it might help him. But I don't know, what were your thoughts on Marchetti?
Well, it depends on his attitude. If he accepts to be the mentor of Strakosha, then I think he could stay. And as you were saying, he can play in Europe League and leave Serie A to Strakosha. That could be a good option. But again, he has to recover and come with the right attitude. With Berisha signing for Atalanta, I think Marchetti could be the perfect option. And we have to see what happened with Guerrieri. Don't forget that he was considered one of the best young goalkeeper in Italy, and he didn't play very well at Trapani, so he needs another season somewhere probably. I don't think he can be in the bench of Lazio behind the Strakosha. So I'm not sure. I think if he accepts, he could be a good option. But we want to hear it from you. We're going to put a poll on Twitter. So everybody says, please vote this poll and tell us what you want for Marchetti. Should he stay for Lazio? Should he be the starter goalkeeper? Or should he be the mentor of Strakosha? Or should we try to sell him at the best offer? I think, Alasdair, we can wrap it here. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
We've been short this time, a little bit shorter than usual. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter, Lazio Lounge, on Facebook, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, where you can listen the full episode, on Spreaker, and please get in touch with us with every question, quotes, or info you want about Lazio.
Yeah, and looking forward to the next one. I might be on the substitutes bench next week. I think I might have an injury problem, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. There's exciting things in the pipeline.
Just like Big, yeah? Already an injured.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's see what happens next week. Thank you very much, Alistair, again for joining me in this podcast, and talk to you soon. Bye, guys.